I was on my second hour with the procurement director from Hallmark Industrial when my brother walked into my home office without knocking. It was nearly 9 p.m. I'd been walking them through a revised fulfillment schedule for their Q2 order, 37,000 units, stage delivery, temperature-controlled freight from 3 separate facilities. The kind of coordination that falls apart if one number is wrong. So if we stagger the Michigan shipment by 5 days, I said, pulling up the routing chart on my second monitor, you avoid the warehouse bottleneck in Toledo, and your distribution center in Columbus stays under capacity limits. The director exhaled. That's exactly what we needed. Send me the amended timeline, and we'll get this locked in by Friday. My brother leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed, smirking slightly. I wrapped the call in under a minute, thanked him for his patience, and hung up. Still doing vendor stuff? My brother said. Not a question, a dismissal. I closed my laptop slowly. That was Hallmark, the amended logistics plan for their spring order. He waved a hand. Right. Well, don't stay up too late. He left. I sat there in the quiet, staring at the screen. That moment would matter more than either of us realized. The next morning, he called me into the conference room at the family business. No warning, no agenda, just him, seated at the head of the table, coffee in hand, looking like he'd rehearsed this. We're streamlining operations, he said. The quarterly strategy meeting next week. We're limiting it to department heads and senior leadership. I waited. You won't need to attend. I blinked. I've been at every strategy meeting for 9 years. Right, but we need people who actually run things, not support staff. The words landed clean and cold. Support staff. I'd built the vendor network, negotiated every major supply contract, handled compliance for 3 states. But to him, I was support staff. I kept my voice level. What's the reason? He didn't even look up. Efficiency. We're bringing in real talent. Modernizing. I nodded once. I didn't argue. I didn't ask again. I just watched him take a sip of coffee, completely unbothered, and I understood something I should have seen years ago. He genuinely believed I was replaceable. That assumption would cost him more than I ever could. I joined the family business right out of college, 23 years old, degree in supply chain management, ready to build something that mattered. My parents were proud. Their youngest, finally putting that education to use. My brother joined 2 years later. No degree, plenty of charm. They threw him a welcome lunch, introduced him to clients, gave him the corner office. I got the basement workspace next to the server room and a list of vendor contracts that needed renegotiation. It wasn't resentment I felt. Not then. It was just the way things were. He was the face. I was the infrastructure. He closed deals. I made sure the deals could actually be executed. I built the compliance systems, designed the logistics workflow, established relationships with manufacturers across 4 states and 2 countries. One Thanksgiving, I'd saved the company $140,000 by restructuring our freight agreements with a regional carrier. At dinner, my father raised his glass. Your brother just locked in the Pendleton contract. 20% growth this quarter. Everyone applauded. No one mentioned that I'd spent 6 weeks making sure Pendleton's shipments would actually arrive on time. That was the pattern. His work was celebrated. Mine was expected. If you asked anyone outside the family who ran our business, they'd say my brother, he was on LinkedIn every week, posting about leadership, sharing industry articles, attending conferences. He had the presence, the charisma. I didn't go to conferences. I preferred operational work, the kind that didn't photograph well. At family gatherings, my uncle would clap my brother on the back and say, "This kid's going places." To me, he'd nod politely. Still with the business? Still with the business. Like I was an intern. Extended family saw me as the quiet one, not ambitious, a little boring. My parents didn't correct them. My brother's name was on the industry newsletter. Mine was on the shipping manifests. I wasn't bitter about it. I just noticed. People assume visibility equals value. And when you're the one making sure the lights stay on, no one sees you reach for the switch. They just notice when it goes dark. What nobody knew, including my brother, was that I'd spent 12 years doing more than just managing vendors. I'd been building them. When the company was still small, back when we had 6 employees and no legal department, I negotiated contracts as myself, not as a company representative. It wasn't intentional. It was practical. Half our suppliers didn't want to deal with a new LLC. They wanted a name, a person, someone accountable. So I became that person. I signed NDAs. I built relationships. I locked in pricing structures and exclusivity terms that were tied to me personally, not the business. Over the years, I cultivated a network of 15 key vendors. 3 of them supplied products we couldn't operate without. 5 years ago, I registered a consulting firm. Nothing flashy, just an LLC, a business account, and a quiet plan. I reinvested every dollar I made from side consulting work. No new car, no vacations. I built a parallel infrastructure. By the time my brother called me support staff, my firm held exclusive distribution agreements with 4 manufacturers. The family business didn't own those relationships. I did, and I'd never told anyone. The email came on a Wednesday afternoon. Subject line, organizational restructuring, effective immediately. I read it twice. My role was being transitioned to an advisory capacity, effective in 2 weeks. They were offering me a consulting position at 60% of my current salary, 16 hours a week, no benefits. The email was professional, corporate friendly. It even thanked me for my years of service. It had been sent to the entire staff. My brother's name was in the CC line, along with my parents. They'd all approved this. I opened my calendar and looked at the meeting I hadn't been invited to. It had happened yesterday. They'd planned this without me. I called HR and asked for clarification on severance terms. The woman on the phone hesitated. You'd need to accept the advisory role to avoid a formal separation. Understood, I said. I hung up. I didn't call my brother. I didn't call my parents. I opened my contract files and started taking notes. 48 hours to decide, they'd said. I didn't need 48 hours. I needed a lawyer. The messages started within hours. My aunt texted, change is hard, but maybe it's time to find your own path. A cousin called to say my brother had made a tough call, but it's probably for the best. Even a family friend, someone who'd worked with us as a supplier for years, reached out to say, they're just trying to protect the business. Protect it from what? Me? I didn't respond to most of them. In the family group chat, someone said I was resistant to change. I watched the messages pile up. Nobody asked my side. Nobody questioned the narrative. They all assumed my brother was right. I turned off notifications and opened my laptop. I started drafting a response to the severance offer. 1 paragraph. Professional. Clear. I declined the consulting role. Please proceed with formal separation terms as outlined in my employment agreement. I didn't explain. I didn't defend myself. I attached my lawyer's contact information and hit send. Then I opened my vendor contact list and started making calls. Not to complain, not to vent, to explore new opportunities. Because while everyone else was talking, I was doing what I'd always done. I was building. I didn't tell my family what I was planning. I didn't owe them a warning. I reviewed my separation agreement with an attorney who specialized in employment contracts. Everything was standard, clean exit, no non-compete clause, because they never thought I was competition. That was their first mistake. I pulled up my contract records and ran an audit. 4 of the family business's core vendor agreements were structured under my name, not the company's. 2 more were set to expire within 6 months. If I didn't renew them, the business would have to renegotiate from scratch. At current market rates, which had gone up 30% since we locked in our terms. I didn't plan to sabotage anything. I just decided I wouldn't renew unless someone asked me directly, with respect. 3 days after I declined the consulting offer, I received an inquiry through my consulting firm. It was from Vanguard Solutions, the family business's largest client. They accounted for 40% of our annual revenue. Their procurement team wanted to discuss direct supplier relationships. My name had been on every logistics email, every shipping confirmation, every contract amendment for 8 years. To them, I was the supplier. I scheduled a meeting. Vanguard's procurement director got straight to the point. We're expanding into 2 new regions, she said. We want to streamline vendor relationships and cut costs where we can. I nodded. That makes sense. She slid a folder across the table. You've handled our logistics for years. We'd like to contract directly with you. I opened the folder. Inside was a preliminary agreement. My firm listed as primary supplier. Terms that saved them 18% compared to what they'd been paying. We ran the numbers, she said. You already manage the vendor network. Cutting out the middleman benefits both of us. I kept my expression neutral. What's your timeline? We'd like to finalize this within 30 days. I reviewed the terms carefully. Everything was clean, legal, logical. I'll have my attorney review this, I said, but I don't see any issues. She smiled. Great, we'll be in touch. I walked out of that meeting with the contract in hand. I didn't call my brother. I didn't warn the family business. I didn't have to. They'd chosen to operate without me. Now they'd see what that actually meant. 3 months later, I walked into the Regional Supply Chain Expo in Cleveland. The family business had a booth near the main hall. Banners with our logo. Promotional materials stacked neatly on the table. My brother was on a panel that afternoon. Scaling family enterprises in competitive markets. I wasn't there to watch. I was there as a guest of Vanguard Solutions. Their VP of Operations spotted me near registration and waved me over. We'd finalized the contract 2 weeks prior. Everything had gone smoothly. Glad you could make it, he said. We're meeting with a few vendors today. Want to sit in? Sure, I said. We walked toward the family business booth. My brother was standing near the display, shaking hands with someone I didn't recognize. He looked confident, comfortable. The VP approached. Afternoon, I'm here to discuss some supply chain changes. My brother's face lit up. Of course. Let's grab a conference room. The VP gestured toward me. I'd like my supplier rep to join us. My brother glanced at me. His smile faltered, just for a second. Then he recovered. Sure, let's go. We walked to a small conference room off the main floor. My brother sat across from us, still composed. He had no idea what was coming. The VP opened a folder and slid a document across the table. We've restructured our vendor relationships, he said, for cost efficiency. My brother nodded, scanning the page. Then his eyes stopped. He looked up. This says you're contracting directly with... He glanced at me. With him? The VP didn't flinch. Correct. We've been working with him for years. He was always our main point of contact. My brother's voice tightened. But we've been your supplier for 8 years. Your company was the intermediary, the VP clarified. But he managed the vendor network, logistics, compliance. It made sense to contract directly. This saves us 18% annually and improves delivery timelines. My brother stared at me. I said nothing. The VP continued, The transition starts next quarter. I wanted to inform you personally as a courtesy. My brother's jaw tightened. Can we speak privately? The VP shook his head. This is finalized. I appreciate your partnership, but we're moving forward. He stood, shook my hand, and thanked me by name. Then he left. My brother didn't move. You did this on purpose, he said quietly. I met his eyes. I built a business. You restructured yours. Both are allowed. I stood and walked out. He didn't follow. By that evening, my phone had 12 missed calls. I didn't answer. The family business lost Vanguard, 40% of their revenue, in a single contract cycle. Within 60 days, 2 other major clients reached out to my firm. They'd heard about the direct supplier model. They wanted the same terms. I didn't solicit them. They came to me. My brother tried damage control. He called vendors trying to renegotiate terms. That's when he discovered the truth. 6 of the 10 key supplier agreements were in my name, not the company's, mine. The business had to renegotiate at current market rates. Costs went up 32% overnight. 3 months later, they announced layoffs. My brother's modernization took the blame. My consulting firm expanded. I hired 3 new staff members. I didn't gloat. I didn't send a message. I just kept working. 6 months after the conference, my mother called and asked if we could meet. I agreed. We met at a coffee shop halfway between my office and their house. My parents sat across from me. My brother was there too. He looked tired. "We'd like to talk about a partnership," my mother said carefully, "or maybe merging operations." I shook my head. "I'm not interested." My brother leaned forward. "We made a mistake. I made a mistake, but we can fix this." "I'm not trying to fix anything," I said. "I'm building something separate." My father spoke for the first time. "Why didn't you tell us?" I looked at him. "I tried for 12 years. You didn't see the value then. I'm not angry. I just moved on." My mother's eyes softened. "We'd still like to stay in touch, as family." "I'm fine with that," I said, "but the business stays separate." We finished our coffee in silence. I paid the bill and left. 2 years later, my firm was featured in Supply Chain Quarterly. The article called us a model for lean, client-centered logistics. The family business had stabilized, smaller, quieter. My brother stepped back from leadership. My parents attended the industry awards ceremony where I received recognition for vendor innovation. We sat at separate tables. They clapped politely when my name was called. We didn't speak much after. A few weeks later, my brother sent an email. "I understand now. I'm sorry." I replied the same day. "Thank you. I wish you well. We see each other at holidays sometimes. The conversations are polite, shallow. There's no reconciliation, but there's no bitterness either. Just distance. I think about it sometimes. Not with anger, just clarity. Competence doesn't require an audience. The work that holds everything together is rarely celebrated. People see the charisma, the presentations, the public wins. They don't see the infrastructure until it's gone. I didn't take anything from them. I just stopped holding it up. Now, I'm building something that doesn't need their approval. And for the first time in 12 years, I'm not tired. I'm sitting at my desk. New project open on the screen. Phone on silent. The office is quiet, and I'm fine with that.